I'm Juliet Kinsman. I'm a sustainability journalist, and I am so happy to be part of conversations that I think will genuinely lead to positive change. What an incredible morning. I was feverishly writing notes myself, just learning so much. Thank you. So this conversation, I think, is one that's so relevant, addressing the talent crisis, because there is one, through diverse recruitment. Can I just get a show of hands? Who here is from hotels explicitly? Right up, hotels. Okay. Who here is a travel agent or a tour operator? Okay. What I think I came away from this morning really feeling heartened about, I don't know about you, was the reminder that the travel industry and hospitality, it's a people business. Hospitality, the word in Greek for hospitality is philoxenia, kindness of strangers, love of a stranger. I always have this front of mind. And I think what's really, really important, I've just written this just now, today, listening, is I think we need to talk a lot less in the vernacular of, capitalism and assets. And, you know, back in 2008 when the GFC, when we thought that was bad, we didn't even know the pandemic was coming, the landscape changed. It became about properties and who owned them, and P&L became different. Go back to the idea, hospitality is philoxenia, the kindness of strangers. And I think we need to think a lot more about people. I don't even want to call people assets. I don't even want to call them human capital, human resources. I don't even like that. We're all people. Let's think in terms of nature. And those people need to be paid properly. That's just me. But we have a big challenge. And there was an article in UK Hospitality which talked about staff shortages. You'll probably know about this, which is that 45% of operators have had to cut their trading hours or capacity, so run at a lower capacity because they simply don't have the staff. They've got the demand, they just can't feed it. There are 200,000, I think about 200,000 jobs available currently, crazy. So I am really excited. I've been able to chat to our panel beforehand. I, again, was feverishly writing notes, and I hope that I can allow their wisdom to be shared with you today. So we have Christina Lawford, who is CEO of DiamondAir. Nadira Lalji, who is founder of Inhabit Hotels, also a director at Precis Advisory, have a big portfolio of hotels assets. Claire Bonham is from Sculpt. Now, Claire is not from the travel industry. I am so excited to have her speaking with you about how they're giving opportunities to disadvantaged young people. Great. Look, let's have a kind of an icebreaker. Claire can't really answer this in the same way, but I wanted to ask, why do you love working in the travel industry? Christina.
Me first. For me, I think it's just a diversification. I think it's not only the people, which we all love, and all of our customers that we love, but it's also the fact that people travel for business, people travel for special occasions, people travel for leisure, and it's just everything. It's just so mixed.
And so, of course, that's aviation. I didn't. Who here's from aviation as well, specifically? Of course, EasyJet. And you said a male-dominated. We were all, and the rest of us in the hotels were like, no, it isn't. That's aviation, babe. Thank you, Nadira.
And for me, I guess similar. I do agree with Christina, and also just the idea of exploration and discovering new places, discovering more about yourself along the way. So self-discovery and learning for sure. And it allows you to live in a constant state of curiosity, which is the thing that makes me most drawn to hospitality.
Have a go. Imagine.
Well, I can talk about what it's like being a consumer and why I love travel. And so, I say I'm kind of an interloper to your gathering, which is very exciting for me because I don't know much about the travel industry, but I do know about young people. We work with young people to help them shape their future through either running kind of our work experience program and making them job ready, or by doing research projects into issues that matter to the young people themselves. And one of the joys of my job is I get to travel. And I was in Lithuania a couple of weeks ago with 16 young women from 7 countries who were learning what it was to be to run a green and sustainable business, which was phenomenal for a number of reasons. But mainly it's because we work with young people who don't have the opportunity to do all of the things that you've talked about, and that kind of exploration, that discovery, learning about other cultures, self-discovery, which is, again, a really, really important part of travel, isn't it? I remember going interrailing when I was 18, and gosh, I learnt a lot about myself during that time. But also, it's the opportunity to learn and share culture. But actually, do you know, one of the things is it's not just about what you can learn from others, it's about what others can learn from you. And I don't know if I have time to tell this story, but there was a very powerful moment when I was in this training in Lithuania where these young women had effectively been trained earlier that week by a group of older men who, not fine, but you know what, they experienced some sexism and some sexist comments. And these young women actually had the courage, which I'm not sure I would have done when I was 18 years old, to stand up in the meeting on the Thursday and say, look, this is unacceptable, we've had these comments made. So it's not just about what our young people can learn, it's about what we can learn from them as well, because it's, you know, we can all learn. And having that, being faced with difference at any age is a challenge, isn't it? But a good one, and something that we should all embrace. So for me, it's about all of the things that you've said, but also about those kind of opportunities for our young people to really learn from each other and to teach us things as well.
Thank you. I mean, I'm actually going to quote, it's a bit of a cliche, it feels like a Pinterest quote, but Mark Twain. Do we all know the Mark Twain quote? Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. That, for me, is the power also and the value of travel. So let's get down to the challenge. Why is it people no longer want to work in hospitality and the travel sector? Why is it a challenge? I'm going to ask you, Nadira.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us here know that there are several kind of colliding factors, whether that's Brexit and the mass exodus of 200,000 EU citizens from the UK, and also obviously the pandemic. Because people have left, we're also putting so much pressure and a heavier burden on our remaining team. And so I was reading that an estimated 6 hours a week are being added to people's existing workloads, which is nearly another day of work every week, and it's just not sustainable. So people are making different lifestyle choices, in part inspired by the pandemic, and just also day-to-day kind of life is getting harder.
Christina, from an aviation point of view.
Yeah, agreeing with Nadira, but I think certainly there's been a few things. I think obviously that through the pandemic, there's real concern about the sustainability of the industry, sadly. People have obviously gone into different sectors which they deem as a safer option. I also feel that through the pandemic and furlough, I get the impression there was a bit of a mind change, a mind shift, in the sense that people just perhaps realised they didn't have to work, and there's different ways of doing things. And I think a lot of people, probably from the travel industry previous to that, were working long, crazy hours, which everyone was used to in that sector, and suddenly realised that, well, actually, there's probably other options and alternatives.
Which is a bit of a struggle, and I don't know if I should say this from our call, but as you said, a lot of them don't want to work 9 to 5. We're like, we worked 5 to 9. But Claire, so what are your thoughts on recruitment within our sector?
Sure. So probably over the last sort of year and a half, 2 years, we've had over 200 young people come through our doors on our kind of work experience program. So looked at employability and things like that. I have to be honest, very few, if any of them, have mentioned the travel sector or hospitality sector as something that they're interested in working in. And I don't think that's because they're not interested. I think the visibility of it just isn't there. So most of our people want to go into things like law and kind of HR and IT. But there's also a big group of people who want to go into things like social work or kind of, making community work and a voluntary sector. I mean, we host all these placements because I'm really keen to encourage diverse backgrounds of people to enter the charity sector, because it's still a very kind of white middle class sector. So that's why we run these programs. But no, travel doesn't feature necessarily on their list of requirements. But
maybe explain a bit as well about what your role is as Sculpt and how it might benefit.
Yeah, so we have a lot of young people who come through our doors. We have a youth advisory board who guide all the things that we do, and we respond to whatever the young people tell us is really important. So we help them with the skills that they want. So things like soft skills they don't learn at school. So they want to learn about public speaking, negotiation, leadership, and things like that. And we run kind of research projects on issues that affect young people. So they are often around environmental and sustainability, for example, but they don't necessarily then connect it with the industry. We run programmes around things like gender discrimination as well. But, we have a ready pool of young people sitting there telling us what they think, which I, imagine could be invaluable to some of you. So, if you want our Youth Advisory Board to help you think about how to attract diverse talent or what would speak to them, then that's something that we could talk about. But I think the other thing that is slightly good news, I would say, is that when I ask young people what it is that they want or they're looking for, they don't say money is not the thing. So I know that there is a perception of this industry as being, in some areas, a bit of a low-paying industry, but actually money isn't the thing that they say that they want. What they want is career progression. They want to feel heard. They want to feel listened to. They want their, even if they're a junior member of staff, for their ideas to be taken forward. But also, they want to be inspired. That's what they say. We want inspiration. Now, that doesn't seem to me something that you can't offer. If all these young people were in the room this morning, and I'm sure for the rest of the day, this is nothing if not inspiring. So I do think that it's not all bad news for the travel industry because, if you can offer inspiration and say, yes, there is career progression, then people will want to come and work in your industry.
So let's look at two different responses to that. One is, well, let's look at what makes great talent, because we also have to think about the people that we're bringing in. What are the non-negotiable qualities? And then we'll look at why is it rewarding to work in the travel industry particularly. So so if we're looking for great talent, how do we get more into our industry? Christina, what do you think you're alert to?
For me, it's always been really about attitude, being passionate. I think there's a lot of skills that you can train, but I think actually it's really, we're in a very personable industry, so it's really important to have those sort of characters and attitudes that you can just really work with. And I think it's been said a few times this morning, but, one rule, just don't be a dickhead, the rest you can work with. So.
She said that first on the call last week. It's obviously the slogan for today. So, no, and also, obviously there's I think, the hunger and the passion you talked about really wanting to do well. And I'm actually sort of, some of the things that came through to me were that, you can train skills, but they need to also have the desire to do well. I will just quote, I don't know if you know Harsha from Syra Hospitality. She always sums it up as three A's: attitude, aptitude, and attendance. Yeah. And I think we struggle with those. Claire, did you want to elaborate? Because that's
it's an interesting one, because I think sometimes we also need to look at what we think is talent and then look and see, are we looking for the right things? Because it's just easy in an industry where people have come and they've gone, again, I'm also in the same category, but it's been quite striking that most of the speakers here have actually been to university and have, had that middle class background. And actually it's thinking about where can we look outside of those spaces and what do we recognise as talent? Is it, and are we seeing talent in other people? For example, I know I don't have children, so I see young people coming into our office, but this may be not your experience if you have teenagers at home. But actually, the young people who come into our office, despite all the conversations about the snowflake generation and that kind of stuff, they're passionate. They're pretty resilient to some things. Some things they think that. I was talking to someone earlier saying they think they're the centre of the universe, don't they? And yes, they do. But actually, they have that resilience. The last few years they have had people we see people from 14 to 30. And they have had things done to them. They're when you're that age, you think that your GCSEs or your A-levels are the most important thing that's ever going to happen to you in the world. But they've had that any sense of agency or choice just completely taken away from them, and they've had to be creative and resilient in the way that they kind of think those things through and the way they manage their emotions. And yes, there is a mental health kind of crisis, but there is also a lot of resilience and and I think that's one of the things that actually you do need in terms of talent is resilience. You need to be able to bounce back from what you're doing.
You've mentioned made the parallel with parenting or having children. I think that's probably a strong one, whether you have children or not. We understand that. And I think something any probably teachers would say is students need to feel like there's their own idea. Children need to feel like they're heard. It's the same psychology.
Yeah, and we probably see people differently when they come to our organisation as you might see them as parents or they might see them as teachers, because schools are very directive in terms of what they tell people. We get people in our office and we say, what do you want to do? What you can, there's a lot of things you can do for us this week. We're going to focus on, we're doing a conference next week. I have to say that video, the Mavericks video, absolutely love it. We're doing a conference next week on gender stereotyping in film and TV, and I'm definitely going to find that video and show it, because But, we tell people, say, these are the topics we're looking at the moment. What do you want to do? Do you want to write an article? Do you want to do a podcast? Do you want to, and then we just let them get on with it. I mean, we obviously support them, but we let them do it. And then we give them proper critical feedback at the end. And they do have the resilience to bounce back from these things if they're given the opportunity. But as I say, what we see, in our organisation is probably different from what you would see young people as a parent or a teacher, because they're in a different environment where they get that self-direction. But I think there's a lot of a entrepreneurial mindset amongst young people. Actually, much more than I've sensed.
That's got pros and cons.
Yeah, well, true.
Nadira, who obviously, we were just chatting as let's say, as friends just before now, and it's been very challenging running hotels at this time. We all know that. What are the skills that you think are so important to be teaching? How are you passing them those on in terms of training schemes?
Yeah.
And we're here, obviously, Women in Travel is certainly, as an organisation, something I recommend as a consultant to businesses. Mm-hmm. Speak to the skills needed, and how do you impart those?
So, to what Claire was just saying on the sort of mental health toolkit and the softer skills, that's actually, so we're an organization that's been around for around 25 years. Inhabit is a newer brand that I founded in the last few years, and a lot of our team have been with us for 20 years. So actually they're really pillars in our organization, but maybe lack some of the people management skills and the softer skills, and they've kind of developed ways of doing things that are not as modern. So in terms of, equipping them with everyday sort of mental health toolkits, language around emotional intelligence, I mean, these are buzzwords and everybody's talking about them, but actually just learning about and understanding them can improve your aptitude in those areas, which is interesting. I mean, it's at least a step in the right direction. So we are working with groups that don't actually often work in travel and hospitality, such as the Mindful Leader. So we've got formal education, and we're working with Self Space, which again does in-person workshops. So we're looking at quite a comprehensive training program.
So we're hearing that you're caring for your people.
Yeah,
and that was a big theme earlier.
Completely. Care and respect were sort of the things that you obviously hope to hire for, and then also just a model it within the organization.
So a comment on why I imagine it's so rewarding to work in this sector is probably, if we're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I always think, as the pandemic's really, it's shown us, one of the most important things is that sense of belonging, and that being part of something I certainly experienced incredible loneliness through the pandemic, and being part of a team and having that safety and security it's a human need, and it's so powerful, the potential in hospitality. What do you think the most rewarding aspects are, Christina, of working in our sector?
Yeah, I would say that just really highlighting what you've touched on there, Juliet. I think that, getting through the pandemic, a lot of people sort of turned around to me and said, you're really resilient to get through it. And I don't think that's an individual thing. I think it's a real team effort. Resilience comes from a team and a tribe, and I think that's one of the most rewarding things. I mean, fortunately, I had a brilliant team who supported me, collectively worked together to pivot, to do whatever we needed to do to get through. And I think to have that sense of belonging and that camaraderie and just the teamwork's incredible, and I think that's certainly been put to the test in this industry sector.
Yeah, similarly, like there's a real culture of acceptance. Hotels welcome people; they're accepting by definition, and you really feel that in terms of people joining the industry too. There aren't a rigid list of prerequisites, or there isn't a clear pathway. A lot of the team that we bring on are pretty fresh and green, anyways, new to the working world. So yeah, it is an accepting place, an inclusive place for people from diverse backgrounds.
Something I took away from last year's event, if you're all tuned in online, was that I was blown away that women over 50 were the hardest hit in terms of losing their jobs due to the pandemic. And actually, what's wonderful in terms of tackling the challenge and the crisis is that this pool of labour is available. Mm-hmm. And I do want to represent Alessandra's thoughts. She said to me in the past, this is a sector that resonates with women because many of us feel that we're naturally hosts. There was talk of empathy, nurturing, and when I say female energy, I don't mean that's to do with gender necessarily. I just mean that energy, those who have that, really lend themselves well. What would you say, Claire?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I would say actually, I see no difference in the men and the boys and the girls who come through in terms of their attitude towards nurturing and things like that. I think actually, those gender stereotypes that have been in place in the past about certain industries are being challenged.
That's
and that's really
wonderful to
good.
hear.
Well, no, it is really important to me. And again, I work in the charity sector, the voluntary sector. It is predominantly female. All of my staff happen to be female. That wasn't a deliberate choice. That's just how it's happened. It's lovely, I will say that. But I also love it when we get other guys into the mix as well. But I think there's a genuine I don't see those kind of stereotypes or those feelings from men that they don't want to work in the industry. But I do think that there is obviously a place for kind of women to feel safe and to feel that they can progress in those spaces. And I think it's about opening up conversations. Actually, it's not about shutting down. It's about opening up, and to me that's really important. The more we can have these conversations, and all the things we were hearing about this morning are just the bravery of people to start having these conversations and things. It is really important. But yeah, I would say that the range of people that we get in, they're just. No two brains are the same. They're all completely different, and I find that wonderful and refreshing.
I think the word that is key to all of this is often just respect. It's about respectful two-way dialogues. It's about the way we communicate. Obviously, I'm going to say that I'm a journalist of many years. Language is so important to me, and I think in this. How else can we make this a more desirable? I mean, there's a big difference between hotels and aviation and restaurants and bars, but how can we make all of these jobs that have a dearth of talent in them more appealing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not just about salary, and very much echoing your point there, from everyone that you're working with, it's not just about the money and remunerations, it's about so much more. And we've all adapted now through the pandemic in terms of the way we work, and we know that, the whole sort of hybrid working model, flexible working and, lifestyle is just so important. And I think it's perhaps just listening to your employees and understanding what it is that's important, and making sure that you work on that to really give them something that's of value, just to entice them back. And it's not just about getting them back. We're not just in this crisis about recruiting, it's about retaining as well. And I think that's something we really, really need to remember as well.
I think with retention, as we know, I come from a sustainability point of view in the conventional sense. We know that brands that have a very clear purpose and heading the direction of positive impact have much, much higher staff retention. I mean, that's a massive economic reason to be more eco. Nadira, yeah.
Yeah, I guess in the hotel side, there are some basic factors like paying better, paying more, but also just the flexibility in terms of shift patterns. And for some people that means added flexibility in hours and reduced hours. For others, it might mean just consistency week after week, so they know what to expect and plan for. So I think shifts and obviously longer shifts in hospitality make it really hard for working moms, for single moms, things like that, when thinking about women specifically. And then I mentioned the training points. So yeah, a combination of the two.
So open-mindedness to doing things differently. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're hearing this morning, is that the barriers that were there, we've been forced to do things differently. We know we can do things differently, more conversations and more I talked about vulnerability earlier and all of this. So it sounds like the right conversations are being had. I do worry a little bit we still go back to business as usual. We talk about all these things, we've watched all the webinars, we've heard it all, and then behind the scenes it's the same SOPs. That's me. I sometimes observe that, and the boiling point, turning point, it was such an interesting thought. We can make things change. So yeah, what else would you say, Claire? I know that you felt, I mean, we've touched on what your thoughts were around how we can make any jobs more desirable. What else would you think about that?
So I think one thing is visibility. As I said earlier, it's from the conversation I've been having with the people who come into our kind of organisation, the travel industry it's not that it's undesirable, it's just not in people's mindset. So I think, getting in younger and at earlier ages to kind of talk to students and talk to young people, go into schools, do careers fairs, that kind of stuff. I think that is definitely one thing. But so I think the other thing is young people are really concerned about the environment and about sustainability, and it's not just sustainability organisations that are doing sustainability, everybody is doing it, right? But I think being more visible about those kind of things, and as I say, just inspiring people. People want to be inspired, and they want to think that they're going into an industry that is changing the world for the better. And actually, what we've heard today, people in this room are here in this room because they want to do that. So it's just a case of being able to find ways to get out there and talk to people. And also, as the previous sort of panel were talking about the kind of the visibility in marketing and things like that, the young people we get are either they're either on free school meals or they are ethnically diverse backgrounds. And they say, we don't see people like us represented. And obviously that's changing. And all the things we've heard this morning is fantastic about the examples of how that's changing. But they just don't see themselves necessarily represented in those industries. So I think, there's some of the ways. But again, this whole idea of working hours and people not wanting to work 9 to 5 and people being a bit flaky. Yes, young people can be a bit flaky, and most of my staff are under 30, and sometimes it is really annoying when they don't turn up, to a meeting and forget to tell you they haven't turned, or they're not coming to a meeting, things like that. But actually, I think like the staff we have, we don't pay well either. The voluntary sector is also terrible in terms of pay, but we have staff who will work, over the odds. I mean, I try not to. Obviously, I try to encourage people not to work really long hours because it's not productive, but they will if they believe in what it is that they're doing. So if we can somehow say to them, this is an industry where I feel like I can belong, because that's also what they say. They talk about belonging. They want to belong somewhere where I can feel like I can belong, where I feel like I can make a difference to the world. People are still idealistic, aren't they? That never changes, that people go into the world of work wanting to change the world. And so, I'm sure that there are ways in which we can be more upfront about what we're doing in that front.
So inspiration, that's what we hear that word a lot, how we want to inspire people. I think people also want, practical advice. How do you inspire your team? And when you're working with the younger generation in particular, that can maybe be a little bit sensitive. I put the word snowflake in there, but they took it out. They can be a bit more sensitive. How do we manage the more fragile? And look, what a time. What a time young people have gone through. We can't imagine what it's like. We've got the climate emergency. We've got pandemics. They don't know what's ahead. So we've got to cut them some slack. So how can we actually really support them, inspire them, motivate them to be great members of the team? What would you say, Nadira, what would your practical advice be to those here facing that challenge?
I guess they can, I think to your point about inspiration, I mean, if we can connect what they're doing to the impact on the wider world, that's a huge point. And I think we're in the midst of trying to certify as a B corporation, and then to have an impact report to substantiate what we're doing, what our impact is on the environment, on our community, and really honing our supply chain, and also working with partners like Women in Travel. So if they can see the impact and that we're having, that will clearly, hopefully, serve as inspiration.
Christina.
Yeah, no, I struggle a bit, so maybe I'll look at Claire to give me some guidance in that sector when we're referring to more perhaps the snowflake generation. But yeah, I think the inspiration is important.
Sensitive generation.
Well. Sensitive generation. I think it is important, again, for them to feel inspired and feel supported. And I think obviously, we have to be really, really conscientious about the whole mental health and well-being. And again, I think that's part of our responsibility as organisations to make sure that they do feel like they have got that, that we're taking their well-being seriously, and there is the support there. So I think that's
mental health is, it's a huge crisis in itself. We all know that. All sectors, everyone we talk to, people, senior management, middle management, and they feel like that I don't have the skills, I don't have the training to support all these people. So it's definitely something that we need to, how do we do that? How do we learn how to support people better in these times?
Come in there in a
yeah, please.
I think, obviously, I'm here kind of representative of young people because that's what we do. But I also think there is an element of structure and appropriate challenge that needs to go into this. They are sometimes people are more sensitive, but actually they're never going to learn if you just kind of let that
tough love.
All the time. Yeah, you do need a bit of that because actually what young people want is the opportunity to see. They've not been in a work environment, and the pandemic has meant that people have not. They've been working from home, so they haven't had that experience of just watching people interact with each other in the office and watching how people talk to each other in a professional context. And I will also say, by the way, that the sensitive generation, there are people in all generations
of course,
and who are going to check out of whatever they're doing. But there's a sense in which I think we do need that also appropriate challenge of saying, well, you're in the workplace now, and flexibility is obviously very important, but that you can't have your cake and eat it. You know, despite what Boris Johnson says, you can't. And we've had, you know, people who said, oh, but well, I'm having to use my laptop at home, and I think that's completely unacceptable because you've given me a desktop computer. I said, yes, because you're office-based, and I'm allowing you to work from, you know, obviously I'm not going to stop you working from home. So our team will come in 1 or 2 days a week now, and that's it. But they kind of want everything. They sort of want, well, but I also want a laptop to be able to take home. And I was like, well, we're a charity, we can't afford to get, when your desktop dies, we will buy you a laptop. But it's the sense in which they kind of, you know, they would never dream of going into a job now where you had to go to the office 5 days a week. And you know,
so we all have to be flexible.
Yeah, no, you have to be flexible, but you also have to have that appropriate challenge of there's a reason why people go into the office or whatever, because face-to-face interaction is really, really important. It will help you develop and it will help you grow. And if you don't give them that, you know, structure as well.
It's parenting again. It's down to anyone. It's similar rules. So I'm not a great parent either, by the way. I'm standing up here like I know. What I wanted to say is let's looking more at the diversity factor and how that's really, you know, let's use that. How does that enrich the teams? How does that benefit customer experience? How does it benefit how the team functions? Let's really look at diversity. How do we also make a recruitment process much more sensitive to that and effective? And yeah, I mean, there's so much, obviously we know there are so many benefits to it. Nadira, what would you say?
There's so much to run with here, but yeah, diversity. We have diverse guests. Having diverse employees just matches that. It's so important. We work with lots of organizations like Women in Travel, or we're trying to identify more. So Sculpt I wasn't familiar with, but I'll be reaching out to you after this. And we've seen really great results. We've hired 3 women from Women in Travel now in our newest hotel, and they are really outshining their peers actually in terms of their work ethic, in terms of their commitment, their attitude, you know, showing up excited to be there, which is a rarity now for a lot of our new hires. So we're really delighted to have them, and actually the quality of their work is excellent too. So yeah, and they're building confidence at the same time. So you sort of see that it inspires our other team members. It's had a really positive effect.
So we have the challenge of there not being enough people to serve our recruitment needs, and we have a lot of people out of work. So how are we not connecting those two challenges better? I mean, you've mentioned some of the ways that we do it. Christina, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you know, diversity is key for every organisation. But I think also reaching, you know, we're talking about a recruitment crisis, so you've got to start thinking out the box. You've got to start really exploring what's out there as organisations and employers. And I think with the, you know, we're a real advocate of Women in Travel in the recruitment programme. Things like this, and obviously listening to Claire in relation to Sculpt and the good work you're doing, these are sort of organisations that we should be really looking at. And I think with it, when you're certainly with the Women in Travel programme, you know, some of the women are marginalised. They've come from more challenging backgrounds, and that you get such an incredible pool of women and different attributes and talents from that. So for me, it's a bit of a win-win, really.
I don't want to get too heavy about saying about one of the biggest challenges I think that causes a lot of the world's greatest problems, whether it's politics or how lots of things. But I do think not enough people spending not enough time with people who are very different to themselves is one of the challenges. Everything's so segmented, everything's marked. Every wine bar, they're like, let's go for this sector, let's put these people together. What we need is a much richer mix of people who don't share the same worldviews, spending time together. And I think there's great opportunity when it comes to anything where you have a customer and someone serving them, for them to be at eye level. And I just wondered how, I mean, I'm picturing, you know, private jets and in aviation, you've got someone from a more humble, normal background, but they're together, they're exchanging viewpoints, which is helpful.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great from a DiamondAir perspective. I mean, I always say if I wasn't doing the job I'd be a DiamondAir airport concierge agent. It's the best job in the world. And I'm not biased just to say that, but we've got, you know, we've got these, all of our employees get to meet, you know, some of the world's most high-profile and high-net-worth individuals. It's incredible, and they have the most down-to-earth conversations. I mean, I don't get to meet our clients anymore. That was years back, so I have to live vicariously off all of their their stories and conversations. But it's amazing when you get these different worlds meeting. And not only that, but you're giving, certainly with our teams, the opportunity to engage with people, as you say, on eye level, in just a really real environment.
And bearing in mind who's in the room, we have a lot of tour operators and travel agents just thinking about how are you going to get your clients or your travelers meeting and really engaging in a meaningful way with the people that they meet on their trips, rather than this sort of servitude, customer separated way. I don't know. Nadira, how do you... I always find that, I mean, you know me, I've had to stay in your hotels because my home was flooded due to the climate emergency, just throwing it in. It's real, it's with us. And I've stayed in your hotels and I've become friends with your staff and things like that, and it's such a mix, and I just love it. You end up just like, yes, I feel the same about Uber drivers.
Yeah, no, we're really lucky with our teams, and there is a lot of mixing, matching ethnically, and diversity and whatnot in the group. I think going forward, what we're focused on is like other forms of diversity. So trying to bring in people who've been out of the workforce for a long time, maybe neurodiverse people formerly incarcerated. So just like broadening, our worldview in terms of what hiring looks like right now, and changing our hiring processes so people are, more aware of how we're filtering people out, whether that's filtering them out negatively because, they haven't had work experience with another hotel group, or and instead looking affirmatively at what their skill sets are and defining those clearly.
Yes, people who've previously served time, that's a big one. I've met with a guy in a hotel in Wales, aristocrat. He said half of his, I don't want to give away who it is, so anyway, half of his establishment was not operating because they couldn't get the staff. And he said to me, the council said they wanted people who've been in jail. I don't want people running around who've got knives in their hands working here. And I just looked at him and I was like, okay, I need a stiff drink. But, all of us could end up in jail. Our life just has guided us in different directions. We just, whatever, giving opportunity. And I think what the word we're hearing is opportunity. And frankly, how interesting to hang out with someone who's I'm sorry, done probably more interesting than a small talk of someone who's gone to Swiss hotel school. Sorry, I'm probably offending so many people here. Oh dear.
Juliet,
thank you to Ecosia for having us. I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry, Google.
I used to work with in the prison sector actually,
There we are.
The talent in these places that you wouldn't necessarily consider, particularly, I will say, women who are often incarcerated for things that, it's not that kind of occasion to have this conversation, but, they're incarcerated for things that either men wouldn't be incarcerated, or they just shouldn't be locked up. But actually, the latent talent that's in these places, is phenomenal. We used to actually employ women who'd been in prison, and who actually on day release, they'd come to us on day release and work in our offices. But again, I think it's about looking, what you see your talent pool, and you have an idea of what that looks like in your head. But actually, if you're broadening it out and thinking about other people, who for some, obviously, people have made mistakes, we all have, but some of them are just more serious than others. But also, I'm really encouraged to hear you talking about people with who are not neurotypical, because we do quite a bit of work with people with special educational needs. And again, I think 5% of the of people with learning disabilities are working. There's more than 5% of them who want to work, but there's only 5% of them who are working. So I think it's about, if we've managed to think about flexibility in working patterns and in allowing, single parents or whatever to enter the workforce, then surely we can also think about, flexibility in terms of, people who maybe have a high functioning autistic but don't want to work on front-facing role, but would be absolutely excellent, on the IT system. I think there's more ways of thinking about it than we're doing.
And I think, just adding to that, I think that if you give people that are perhaps marginalised or had more challenging backgrounds the opportunity, you're going to get the loyalty as well. People are going to step up and they're going to turn up if they feel that you're really giving them an opportunity as an organisation. And generally, invariably, if people have been through challenges, they're pretty resilient, smart cookies,
So true.
that can deal with a lot.
And how do you feel? I don't know. I feel if I go to a cafe and I'm served by someone who's got Down syndrome, I love that establishment all the more. And I say give more visibility to disability. I'm biased because my godson is severely disabled. And so these things, but you just like props. I love you. And then you have a bond with, absolutely. And definitely the ex-offenders. I think I quite like that more than we're all ex-offenders, just some of us get caught. But so I thank you so much. We've only got one more minute. And have we got any questions? From anyone? I think we've covered a lot. I mean, look, we wanted to give actual practical advice as well and helpful. You all come from different perspectives. I think we know what the themes are. But does anyone have a particular... Chris?
Hi, Chris. They, she are my pronouns from Lightning Travel Recruitment. Not a question as such, just a kind of comment on this. I have so much to say and I'm not going to. In terms of, it's great to hear neurodiversity is touched upon. It's great to hear different classes and backgrounds be touched upon. I think I'd be doing myself a disservice from not bringing up the trans perspective here. I know there's some wonderful trans icons in this room. Trans women are women. We have non-binary representation here as well. And I think in this industry as a whole, there's an arrogance and an entitlement towards, oh, if we're paying someone, they'll come and work for us and we're doing them a favor. And it's not that. I think we need to be educating our staff. We need to be doing Stonewall training. We need to be looking at recruitment processes. If you've got a job, great, but so have all of your competitors. You need to show that you are here to support these communities. And that is not being done in this industry.
Minorities. As I said to you just before, I think it was EasyJet or it was British Airways, and there was a flight attendant who was trans. And I just said, everyone on the plane, you could see them looking curiously and so... happy to see that. I mean, I don't know about you, but even when I get up and go to the loo on a plane, I feel shy, I get stage fright. But imagine walking up and down that. I thought, and again, I loved that airline. I think it was EasyJet. Was it EasyJet? Yeah, we'll just say that. It's a sponsor. They're good. It's EasyJet. But, you know, in that moment, you're like, exactly as you say. So it's all, everyone, minorities, all different reasons for celebrating people and just getting conversations and awareness around the differences, because that's, I think we can have more of that. So thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for. And please do, honestly, they were spilling with wisdom when we spoke before.